If you want talk, games, and fun all rolled into one, well, you've come to the right place. This is The Game Show, where host Bradley Clarke and his special guests talk about the world of television game and competition shows. But Bradley's guests aren't here to just talk. They came to play a game as well. What will today's topic be? What game does Bradley have planned? There's only one way to find out.
It's time to start the show.
You heard the man. Welcome to The Game Show. And here's your host, the Bradster himself, Bradley Clarke.
The Game Show is on. Thank you so much, Austin Angelo, and welcome everybody to another exciting episode of The Game Show, the talk show all about the world of television game and competition shows. I'm Bradley Clarke, the Bradster. And as I do on occasions, I like to personalize my opening line to reflect one of the shows that will be talked about on the episode. Well, today's opening line was another example of this, as fans of a certain British quiz show that has recently crossed the pond for a second time will definitely know what The Game Show is on hints at.
The chase is on.
That's right, it's The Chase, a battle of brains against the beast. And my guest today just so happens to have been the executive producer of the GSN version of The Chase. However, just like many game show producers, my guest has also worked on a few other game shows. And by a few other game shows, I actually mean a lot of other game shows. Whether it be as an executive producer, an executive in charge, a creator, a writer, or a creative consultant. And here are just some of the shows featured on my guest's incredible game show resume.
Stop at 2,000! Stop at 3,000 and a spin! Stop at 4,000 and a spin! Leonard's going for it! All right, Chief Leonard, fire for it! Stop! $5,000 and a spin!
Today, these three players are after high stakes, but they'll have to avoid the whammy as they play the most exciting game of their lives. From Television City in Hollywood, it's time to press your luck.
Get ready to match the stars. From Out of This World, Joe Alaskey. From Mr. Belvedere, Eileen Pratt. Match Game's own Charles Nelson Riley. Television favorite, Sally Struthers. From Knots Landing, Chris Lemon. And from Snoop, Daphne Maxwell-Reid, as we play the all-new star-studded Match Game. And here's the star of Match Game, Ross Schaefer.
From Los Angeles, it's the biggest game show in television history, where one person, in one night, could walk away with $2 million. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Greed.
The game with big bucks and whammies is even bigger and better than ever. It's time to press your luck and play Whammy.
Now, if you're saying to yourself, you know what? I remember hearing these titles all appear on a previous episode of The Game Show. Well, pat yourself on the back because, as Bob Barker would say, you are a loyal friend and true.
You are a loyal friend and true.
Yes, you're right. I did mention these shows on a previous episode because my guest, who worked on the game shows just mentioned, is today becoming a two-time guest on The Game Show. Although last time he was on The Game Show, we talked about many of the shows he had the pleasure of working on, with his extensive career, there were some game shows we didn't get to talk about. Plus, as a very curious person when it comes to game show knowledge, I still have more questions I'd like to ask my guest about some of the shows we did talk about. So I think it's only fair that I introduce my guest so we can start chatting about the TV programs we know and love. I am personally proud to call myself a game show know-it-all, and I can honestly say that there aren't too many people who know more about game shows than myself. However, joining me on the game show today is someone who might know a thing or two more about the game show genre because he has been working in the game show industry for more than 40 years. He is one of the most well-known and well-beloved individuals within the game show community, and I'm honored that I have this second opportunity to increase my game show knowledge from him. Please welcome back onto the game show, TV Bob himself, Bob Boden. Bob, thank you so much for joining me again.
Wow, thank you for that. That's quite amazing.
It is such a pleasure that you are my special guest for a second time because I learned so much from our conversation during your last appearance. And as you know, I have a desire to learn everything I can about game shows. So I am very excited to pick your brain once again and hear what facts and stories are in store for our conversation this time.
I'm honored to do it and pick away.
Well, I'm excited to do just that. So, Bob, we're going to talk about a few shows that you worked on, including The Chase and Press Your Luck and Boom. And then, later on, for the game of the day, instead of playing two classic game shows in one like you did last time for Game Show Mashup, you'll only be playing a Bradley Clarke variation of one classic game show. But this game involves the help of 4 additional people. So there's a small hint about the game you'll be playing in a little bit.
Okay, I'm up for it.
So, Bob, without further ado, are you ready to start talking about game shows?
Well, if we have to, I guess, sure.
I think it's a good topic to talk about. So last time you were on the show, we chatted about The Chase on GSN, which you were the executive producer for. But since I am a big fan of The Chase, I still have a number of questions about the GSN version of The Chase that I've been wanting to ask you. And I want to start by talking about the differences between The Chase USA and The Chase UK. My first question is, Bradley Walsh, the host of the UK version of The Chase, is known for being a quick, fluent question reader. So when trying to find a host for The Chase USA, was that the main priority, to find someone who is as quick and fluent of a question reader as Bradley Walsh? And was it tough to find a person like that?
I'll give you a little backstory on that. The Chase was originally piloted for Fox Primetime, and Bradley Walsh actually hosted the pilot, which we shot on the set in London of the ITV version of The Chase. So the original design was that if it was to go on Fox, Bradley would host it. He would come over here, I presume, and we would use a variety of chasers, not unlike what the British show still does. We used Mark Labette, and we also used Brad Rutter, who I brought over with us to be the American chaser. So we did a pilot with each one of them. And the show was very well received at Fox, but there was a change in management, and eventually the show got dropped from their development slate.
Tonight on The Chase, we've combed the country to find the brightest,
Pulp Fiction.
snitch, bravest,
I'm a 6-time U.S. sumo champ.
and courageous enough
Challenge accepted.
to take on the world's undisputed mastermind.
You can't beat me, so go home now.
For a chance to win,
$500,000.
these mere mortals will try to survive the most gut-wrenching mental smackdown ever
I win. That's what I do. That's all I do.
as they face off together in an epic 4-versus-1 battle with the world's ultimate Einstein, Mark Labette, the Beast.
Can't believe you got that right.
You're mistaking me for someone who cares. My job is to catch them by any means necessary.
Will they bring this genius down?
There's nothing that's going to stand in the way of not even the Beast.
Or will they suffer a crushing defeat
The law is simple.
That is wrong. Wrong. That is wrong.
You lose.
against his enormous intellect
Tungsten, Esmeralda, Peanuts, Catskills, Beethoven, Brain, Elizabeth I.
and ego?
Now I'm going to destroy you.
Then I feel seriously tricked.
Can these everyday civilians stay ahead of the chaser?
Are you mad?
The emotional roller coaster ride begins now.
You ready? I'm ready.
I'm ready. No, I'm not.
I'm always ready.
Well, I wish you luck, because the chase is on. Thank you so much. Hello and welcome to The Chase. Today's team of 4 total strangers believe they have what it takes to beat one of the world's best quiz brains and take home over $500,000. Oh, I hope so. Let's meet the team.
So the next day, literally the next day, because GSN was hovering over the show, they really wanted it. It moved over to GSN. They made a deal for it. And we went into pre-production without a host. We made a few changes from the British format, which I'm very happy about, which have carried on to this day on the ABC version. And we needed a host. And GSN at the time controlled all of the hosting decisions. It was not made by ITV or by me. It was basically they're going to tell us who the host is and we're going to train that host. So they had just done a project with Brooke Burns. They had a deal in place with her, which was a major piece of this puzzle because they didn't have to negotiate with her. They already had a hosting deal locked down. So when it came time for us to assign a host, they said, Brooke Burns is your host. And I said, terrific. I like her very much, but I'm not sure if she can do this. It's a very difficult show. And they assured me that she'd be great at it. And I was prone to believe them because I think she's a very talented woman, but it's a tough show. So we waited and waited and waited. We were going into production on a Friday. And on that Monday, they said, okay, Brooke is your host. Deal is done. You can start to work with her. So I had 3 days with Brooke to teach her the show, to make her comfortable with it, and most importantly, to create whatever chemistry we could possibly achieve in that short a time between her and the Beast, because GSN only wanted the Beast as the chaser. They didn't want any other chaser initially. So we staged a run through with Brooke. I did the first pass at it just to demonstrate the show. They had sent her episodes of the British show to watch, which I know she did. But it's not the easiest show to pick up, and it's a very, very fast-moving hosting job. So I did a sample of a run-through for her, and after that, she was very, very attentive and taking notes and really watching not so much me, because I'm not a talented host, but I was trying to impress upon her the pacing of the show, the dynamics of the competition, how to kind of carve out a role of being a host, but also being an advocate for the contestants. And after that one run through, I took the hand cards that I had been using to read from and I handed them to her. And I said, okay, you're up. We're shooting in 3 days. And she got up there and it was almost like she had been born to host this show. She was smooth. She didn't miss a beat. She covered all of the mechanics, all the rules, and read the questions with lightning speed, even though she had barely had a chance to look at them, and had all of the host dynamics that I could want. She was an advocate for the contestants. She had a relationship with the Beast. And it was really, at that moment for me, a life-changing moment in my producing career, because I knew that I didn't have to worry about one of the key elements of the show, which was who would host it and how good would they be, because I knew she would be great.
I think Brooke Burns was a fantastic host of The Chase as well. And you mentioned GSN had control over who would host the show, but did they also have control of the music and the sound effects that would be used on The Chase USA? Because none of the music or sound effects from the British version were brought over, as The Chase on GSN used all new music and sound effects.
Yes, GSN was all over every aspect of the show. They didn't like the music package from the UK. I actually did, and I lobbied for it, but I didn't win out. And they wanted a different sound and a different feel for the music, so they got what they wanted. I didn't agree with all of them. Sound effects are really, really important in game shows to help tell the story, particularly for people who may not be paying full attention to the screen. They might be distracted. They might have left the room for a moment. So the sound effects give the viewer a sense as to what's right, what's wrong, the progress of the game, the pacing of the game. They're really important. And it's not just important what the sound effect is, it's the timing of the sound effect. And if you give it away too early, it does telegraph the outcome, which is not what I would want as a producer. But the network makes those calls, and some battles are worth fighting and some are not.
During the individual chases at the table on the British version, once either the chaser or the contestant locks in with their answer to a question first, a 5-second clock gets put on the other player to answer. as indicated by the music that plays once the first lock-in is made. Brad fact.
Charlie Jones and Joshua Pascoe have both played which EastEnders character? A. Peter Beale, B. Ben Mitchell, C. Martin Fowler. Oh, Chase is out of time. That's what we love.
That's never happened, ever.
There's always a first time for everything. What have you put? Ben Mitchell. Here we go. Correct answer is... Come on, step close to home. Don't forget the little rule. When either player presses, you have 5 seconds in which to make your answer.
Oh, you're getting such a slap. Yeah, you always get brave when there's a big contestant, aren't you?
You want to watch it, cockle.
So I was wondering, on the GSN version of the chase, during the individual chases, was there a time limit put on the other player once the first answer lock-in was made?
We did retain the 5-second clock. We didn't talk about it. The reason we didn't talk about it is because it very rarely came into play. The chasers certainly knew not to let time run out. And the contestants, I think maybe one time that I can recall, time ran out on the 5-second countdown. So it's not worth it to waste airtime to confuse people with a rule that is barely implemented. So we chose to play it down. There was a music bed in between the first lock-in and the second lock-in, but there was no indication really that there was a time limit. We kept that transparent. The last thing you want to do is throw in extra rules that could confuse people.
Another rule that many people might not know about for the chase is the Lazarus game situation, which is when the chaser defeats all the contestants on the episode during their individual chase portions. What happens is, since no one made it to the final chase, one team member is nominated to play the final chase solo against the chaser for, in the case of the GSN version, a total of $15,000, which is $5,000 for each of the 3 team members. Brad fact. One Lazarus game did occur in season 3, but the Beast still ended up winning. So Bob, as a producer, did you mind that the Lazarus game occurred because it provided a redemption storyline for the final chase and could result in some excitement? Or did you not like it when the Lazarus game occurred because the main game was a complete downer since all 3 contestants lost their individual chases?
The network was scared to death of a Lazarus. They just thought that if there was a Lazarus, it indicated a failure in the production and that we couldn't control what happened. And how could that occur? We got a lot of grief about preventing Lazarus situations. So the one time when it happened, the network was just steaming and they were pacing back and forth. And how could this happen? And how could you let this happen? First of all, we don't control the outcome of the show. And we do our best to cast people who have a chance to beat the chasers in their rounds, but we can't make that happen. So if in a rare instance, and it was rare, all 3 players were to lose out, I didn't find that to be an embarrassment. I thought it was a nice little twist. The one contestant who did face the chaser alone in the end game did remarkably well, not quite enough to win, but it was a very exciting round from my point of view. And I don't think it ruined the show at all. You certainly don't want it every day, and you want it to be a rare occurrence, but it's a moment of triumph for the chaser. And if what you're selling, which is what the show was marketed as, can anyone beat the chaser? Can anyone beat the Beast? Well, in an instance where all 3 players are knocked down by the Beast, that's quite an accomplishment for the chaser. So instead of being embarrassed about it, I suggested that we own it. But the network never came around on that. They still thought it was the worst possible outcome to have a Lazarus. And again, whenever contestants lose, the chasers win. And that's one of the signatures of the shows, is that these chasers are unbeatable or close to unbeatable. So every once in a while, they're unbeatable.
Keeping with our conversation about the GSN version of the chase, let's now talk about James Holzhauer. Now, I'm sure all my listeners know him as Jeopardy James Holzhauer because of his incredible 32-game winning streak on Jeopardy from April to June of 2019. But what many people may not remember is James was first seen as a contestant on The Chase back in 2014. Brad fact. It's interesting because the first time I saw James on Jeopardy, I immediately recognized him as I remembered his episode of The Chase and how he dominated for his team during the final chase. And prior to his first appearance on America's favorite quiz show, Jeopardy was releasing promo videos on their website and social media that something big was coming. So once I saw James win his first game of Jeopardy, I figured he was what they were referring to. I personally didn't think it would become as huge as it did, especially with James winning over $100,000 in a single game 6 times and setting so many Jeopardy records along the way. But I was proud to know before his hype and fame began that James was going to be the next great Jeopardy success story because of how phenomenal he was on The Chase. Now, before we get into the specifics of his performance against the Beast, I want to ask if you were involved with the casting process and whether you saw how great James was at trivia during his initial contestant audition or some practice games.
Yes, I was involved in every aspect of The Chase as the showrunner, and the casting department would pitch us contestants who they had found in various places. I believe that James auditioned in Chicago, and Chad Haywood, our casting guy, I remember he called me specifically about James, and he said, I just found this guy. He is unbelievable, off the charts. He could probably beat the Chaser single-handedly. And I was very interested in seeing more. I watched his audition tape, and clearly he was somebody who was strong enough to be on the show. And we liked his personality. We liked the fact that he was a gambler, that he had a pregnant wife. There was just so many reasons to put him on the show. And the challenge was, who do we put with him? We don't want to make him so dominant that if more than one player made the final chase, that it would be all about him and they would ride his coattails. But we also didn't want him to be the only one left and the other 2 players got eliminated. So it was very tricky to figure out the balance of that team. I think in retrospect, the team was actually a little too strong, and all 3 players made it to the final chase. He did dominate the final chase, but I don't think anyone felt that they were necessarily riding his coattails. I think had he not been there, I think they still might have won, but clearly he was the lead. He was fast on the buzzer. He had a wide range of knowledge, and his delivery was staccato. He certainly didn't take a lot of time and a lot of flourish in his answers, but that's part of his brand and part of his charm.
Yeah, James answered 19 questions correctly by himself during the final chase, with the team total being 26 steps. That's including the 3-step head start. Brad fact.
In 1963, Lyndon Johnson was sworn in as president while inside what plane?
Air Force One.
Correct. Mariah Carey credits her healthy pregnancy to what Chinese needle insertion therapy?
Acupressure.
Acupuncture. The fashion house Hugo Boss is headquartered in what European country?
Germany.
Correct. What woman wrote the 1939 play The Little Foxes?
Hellman.
Correct. What breed of dog is most famous for rescuing people in the Alps?
St. Bernard.
Correct. Each series in the CSI TV franchise is used what band's music for its theme?
The Who.
Wrong person answer. It was The Who. What color is the star on the flag of North Korea?
Red.
Correct. The Kama Sutra was originally written in what ancient language?
Sanskrit.
Correct. In what 2008 animated feature does Jack Black play a high-kicking creature named Poe?
Kung Fu Panda.
Correct. What textile pattern has rows of slanting lines that resemble a fish skeleton?
Herringbone.
Correct. After being a page, what was the second stage of training for a medieval knight?
Squire.
Correct. What artist is known for his painting of a swimming pool titled A Bigger Splash?
Hockney.
Correct. In 1687, what Englishman published his discoveries in the Principia?
Isaac Newton.
Correct. What Russian coin is worth 1/100th of a ruble?
Kopek.
Correct. What does the computer term USB stand for?
Universal Serial Bus.
Correct. What woman had a successful solo album after singing lead for the Fugees?
Lauryn Hill.
Correct. A spunky redheaded orphan is the subject of what 1945 book by Astrid Lindgren?
Pippi Longstocking.
Correct. The country of Lesotho is an enclave within what other country?
South Africa.
Correct. How many electrons are in a hydrogen atom?
1.
Correct. Krishna is an incarnation of the god Vishnu in what religion?
Hinduism.
Correct. What top gallery in Florence was designed by Giorgio Vasari as an office building? Correct. In what 2000...
Mark Labette has said on Twitter that James Holzhauer is the best player he has ever faced on The Chase. And I remember reading a statement by him saying that he gives credit to the American version, and specifically the GSN version, for allowing top quizzers like James to be featured on the show. Because most of the contestants on the British version and the Australian version, which the Beast is also a chaser on, aren't up to the caliber of James and many of the American contestants. So Bob, was it a goal of yours to feature contestants on The Chase that had the best capability of winning against the Beast and not just your average quiz show players?
Yes, very much so. The Chase was a very difficult show to cast. You wanted people who clearly were Jeopardy level or higher. You wanted people who would do very well on the intake exam and who would have personality. We had a mandate to find youthful contestants as much as possible. Obviously, diversity is always a mandate. And we, I think, did as good a job as we could do, but it was difficult. Many of the players who scored extraordinarily well just didn't have that telegenic personality that you needed to make good TV and to do good interviews and all that. And we had trouble diversifying the contestant pool. I will acknowledge that. But so does any hard quiz show. Not a lot of people know as much as they think they know, and not as much as they have studied to prepare for shows like this.
You mentioned that it was hard to balance a team with James, but I'm curious. Did wanting to balance a team with James to the best of your ability stem from the season 1 episode featuring Raj Dawalia, in which he won $125,000 by himself after dominating the final chase as a solo player?
I think we knew from the get-go that the balance of the team was critical. We would always aim to have at least 2 players get through. If it was 3, that was great. Sometimes when a player gets through, it's not necessarily because they're amazing. They're just good enough to keep the chaser away. Because if they get most of their questions right, they're going to get through, even if the chaser gets everything right. So we always wanted at least 2. Every once in a while, we would have 1 player make it through, and that was okay also. It was actually rather exciting, like in the case of Raj. But we certainly didn't want a Lazarus situation. And it shouldn't always be 3, because then that shows that the game is not really challenging enough. And again, the marketing was all about, can anyone beat the Beast? So if everyone beats the Beast, then there's no show. So it was a tricky situation. And if we had a tape day where the Beast was particularly strong and had wins, we might toughen up the material on the next day. But remember, if you toughen it up for the Beast, you're also toughening up for the contestants. So it's a very hard show to control the payout. Many other game shows can adjust much easier. If you have a lot of wins on Pyramid and you want to give away less money, you can make that final board pretty darn impossible. We didn't have that ability because whatever is done to one side is also done to the other. And if you make it tougher for the contestants, it's going to be even harder for them to beat the Beast. So it was a challenge in material preparation and in casting from the get-go. Trivia is hard. Harry Friedman will tell you he did Jeopardy for over 2 decades. It is a tricky thing to do because the contestant pool is not enormous, and you do have to find a balance of material where it's not so difficult that the home audience is lost, but it's got to be challenging enough that you feel when these people win that they've earned it.
So let's talk about his performance on the show. James was the 3rd player to face the Beast, and his other 2 teammates successfully survived their individual chases to amass a team total of $115,000 up to that point. During his cash builder, James faced a total of 14 questions in the 60-second time limit and amassed $60,000 by answering 12 of those questions correctly. Brad fact.
Hi there, James.
Hi, Brooke.
How you doing?
Great.
What do you do for a living?
I gamble on sports for a living. I pay my rent by knowing who's going to win tomorrow's baseball and football games.
Wow, a bit of a risk taker. Okay. If you win the money tonight, what are you going to do with it?
Well, that smoking brunette in the front row right there is carrying my baby right now. So I hear those things are expensive.
Congratulations. Well, let's see if we can raise that number to help you raise your child. This is the cash builder. Are you ready?
Absolutely.
Let's put 1 minute on the clock. Your time starts now. In the movie Top Gun, what actor played Maverick?
Tom Cruise.
Correct. What 1992 skater became the first Asian American woman?
Yamaguchi.
Correct. What's the last month of the year with exactly 30 days?
November.
Correct. Known for his hats, what singer's pop hits include I'm Yours and I Won't Give Up?
Bruno Mars.
Jason Mraz. What beat poet's writing was declared not
Ginsberg.
obscene? Correct. Ocular tonometry is a pressure test that screens for what
Glaucoma.
medical condition? Correct. Near the start of the Civil War, what state was the first to secede from the
Carolina.
Union? Correct. In math, an exclamation point after a number is a symbol of
Factorial.
what function? Correct. Edgar Degas was prominent in what art movement?
Impressionism.
Correct. What 80s Kevin Costner film is known for the line, if you build it, he will come?
Field of Dreams.
Correct. Andy Samberg's TV comedy is set in the 9-9 precinct of what New York
Brooklyn.
borough? Correct. Who was the first U.S. Supreme Court Chief Justice?
John Jay.
Correct. What Yankees baseball star is nicknamed A-Rod?
Alex Rodriguez.
Correct. Since his death in 2013, whose wife Chaz writes a blog on his movie review website?
Pass.
Ebert. Wow, $60,000. Woo! And 12 correct answers. That is the highest amount I've ever seen built up in a cash builder. Congratulations. Well done.
After seeing his performance in the Cash Builder and knowing that he is a professional sports gambler, did you automatically think James was going to take the high offer during his individual chase?
Yeah, we did. We were pretty positive he would go for the high offer, particularly after his Cash Builder performance. But he is a gambler at heart, but he's also cautious and he's extremely smart. And I think he figured that it's better to guarantee a place in the final chase than to risk him being eliminated and the team losing him. I know the team very much wanted him back in the final chase because they knew that he would be the key to their victory. So I don't think it was a mistake for him to go for the middle offer, but maybe if he had to do it over again, he would have done something different.
Do you think if the high offer was higher than $120,000, which was only double his $60,000 Cash Builder total, James might have taken the high offer? And theoretically, how high could you make that high offer based on GSN's budget?
The answer to your first question is absolutely. I think if the high offer had been 150 or 180, I think James would have gone for it in a heartbeat. I think he felt that 120 was just simply not enough to risk his continuing on the show. But if it had been a more enticing amount, yes. We were always in a tug of war with GSN because they wanted to control the budget. That's their job. But I think that higher offers on several occasions would have made for a better show, either because the contestant would take the higher offer and possibly earn it. But again, just because you go for it doesn't mean you earn it. So I think either way, it would have been exciting and dramatic if more players had taken the higher offer and either won or lost it. But we were just shy of $200,000. Anything in that realm or higher was too scary for the network because even though they knew that the likelihood was that it wouldn't be won, they couldn't risk that kind of budget. It was already a very, very expensive show for them.
Breaking off from talking about James for just a second, I do have another curiosity in regards to the final chase. On the British version, when a player buzzes in to answer a question, their name is announced by a recorded voice, so that player knows that they buzzed in first. Brad fact.
Your time starts now. What animal represents the zodiac sign Leo?
Janine.
Lion.
Correct. Where in the body is the lacrimal caruncle?
Colin.
Eye. Correct. 2016 film Allied is set during what war?
Colin.
World War II. Correct. What yellow solid is the 16th element on the periodic table?
Joe.
Sulfur.
Correct. 8 and 8 Plus are phone models by what tech company?
Janine.
Apple.
Correct. 2003, Cilla Black quit what TV show live on air?
Joe.
Blind date.
Correct. Which young prince started primary school 2017?
Janine.
George.
Correct.
I know the GSN version in Season 1 used the name voice when a contestant buzzed in during the final chase, but why wasn't the final chase voice used on the GSN version after Season 1?
When we went to do the British pilot, I thought that was a really, really clever device because I believed, and I still do, that the audience needs to hear the name of the person so that they can keep track of who's answering. The cameras can't always get to the person answering fast enough, and we didn't have individual cameras on each player. So sometimes the player would be on a single shot. I'm sure we had a camera dedicated to James that day, but sometimes the answer is on a wide shot or a two shot, which means the player at home, unless they happen to recognize the voice, didn't necessarily know who answered unless they were paying very, very strict attention. So I liked the idea of the buzzer prompting the voiceover call out. GSN didn't like it. They didn't like it from the get-go. I got it through season 1, but at the end of season 1, they insisted that we replace it with a monitor in the contestants' line of sight, which told them who buzzed in. Now, there is a minus to the voiceover, which is it does take up a fraction of a second. And when you add up those fractions of a second over 25, 30 questions, it can make a difference in the amount of time that the players have, which again is a delay that the chaser doesn't have. They don't have to wait to be called. So I was on the fence. I still like that idea, but again, the network rules, they insisted we get rid of it, and we did. From that point forward, the game moved faster, and I'll acknowledge that. I just think that it's helpful to the viewer, listener, to hear the name of who is answering and to connect that name with that person's voice. But that only lasted the first 8 episodes.
Continuing our conversation about James Holzhauer on The Chase, is it true that James auditioned to become a second chaser on the GSN version?
Yes, he did audition. After seeing his performance, we thought that if there ever was an opportunity to convince GSN to add a second chaser, specifically an American, that James would be a great choice. So we did an audition. We did put him in the chair. We flew him in for the day. We asked him a whole series, I think about 200 short answer questions to replicate the timing of the final chase. And then we asked him, I think it was about 50 chaser type questions, multiple choice. And he did extraordinarily well. And we worked with him a little bit on little moments of personality. We let him comment on his answers. We purposely put in some questions that would be a little bit provocative to make him laugh, to make him react. And I thought he did a tremendous job in all aspects of this audition. But we sent it over to GSN and they weren't interested. They wanted the Beast. Nothing against the Beast. I love Mark Labette to this day, and I think he was an amazing foundation for the U.S. version on GSN. But I would have loved to have had more variety, and I think James would have been a great chaser, but he is a great chaser now on the ABC version. So there you go. We had the idea before they did.
Well, that proves, Bob, that you are a quiz show trendsetter.
Yeah.
Well, not just with James, but with Brad, too, because like you mentioned, Brad was the American chaser on the Fox pilots of The Chase.
That's right.
Now I want to go further back into your game show past and talk about Press Your Luck, which you oversaw as the program executive for daytime programming for CBS. First of all, I've always been curious, how are the placements for all the money amounts on the big board determined? Because there were many episodes in which squares 2 and 3 both featured $500 slides, and squares 13 and 14 both featured $2,000 slides. And in addition, later on in the run, all 5 squares on the left side of the second round board contained money with a spin, with the 3 middle squares each containing a $750 plus a spin slide. Brad fact! So I was wondering if the money amounts were just randomly distributed around the board, or was there a purpose to where they were located on the big board?
Well, I attended the pilot, and I was not at CBS when the show first started. And then after I joined CBS, I was not the point person on the show until I think middle of the way through the second season. So I wasn't really involved in the development of the board. There was a forerunner of the show called Second Chance on ABC, where the slides on the board were fixed. They didn't shift from one moment to the next.
Today, Maggie Brown, Jack Campion, and Lynn Klein will be risking everything they've won every time they play Second Chance. And now, here's the man who gives everyone a second chance, Jim Peck.
And I know that one of the major components of the revision of that format into what became Press Your Luck was that the slides would change through the course of the board round. As to exactly where each item was housed on the board, I can't speak to that. I really was not involved in that. I believe just anecdotally from what I had heard when I did take over the management of the show forward, that there was a design to it, that there was always only one square where big bucks amount plus a spin would live. There would be only one other square where the words big bucks would live. There were other sort of signature places that different slides would be, like trips and money amounts and other types of prizes. But the most important thing is that a whammy could be pretty much anywhere. And as the board changed, you weren't only looking at the bouncing lights, but you were looking at how each of the board slides changed. So it was pretty impossible until Michael Larson came around to predict where anything would be. But he knew that that one square on the top row, a little bit towards the right, would be only big bucks and never a whammy. And I believe there was one other square that only had money amounts and never a whammy. And once he knew that, and what he did was legendary in terms of memorizing what at the time were the 5 different patterns, all he focused on were those non-whammy squares. And I believe that was by design, but I can't tell you specifically what was planned where and when.
By the way, besides square number 4 on the big board, which contained $3,000 in a spin, $4,000 in a spin, and $5,000 in a spin, which means there was no whammy, the other square that didn't contain a whammy was square number 8, which was the middle square on the right side of the big board that contained $500 in a spin, $750 in a spin, and $1,000 in a spin. Brad fact! You just mentioned that you attended the pilot for Pressure Luck, but now I want to talk about the pilot for GSN's Whammy, the all-new Pressure Luck, which you were the executive in charge for. So Bob, were you involved with creating the format for Whammy and making the changes in the game from the original version?
Yes, Whammy was a pet project of mine. When I got to GSN, we talked about creating a slate of original programming, and I was all for that. But I felt that a show that had not received the level of attention and support that it deserved was Pressure Luck, partly because I worked on it and loved it, and I felt that it was ripe for coming back. But I thought that it had a level of excitement and, frankly, a format that was already worked out, quite a complex format. So we didn't have to go through the same long and sometimes dreary development conversations to bring a new show to air. So I lobbied for the new Pressure Luck. I wanted to call it Whammy because I felt that more people knew the name Whammy than knew Pressure Luck, because whenever I would speak to somebody about game shows, they said, whatever happened to that Whammy show? Very often they would say the Whammy show and not Pressure Luck. So I felt Whammy is the identifying feature of the show. Let's call it Whammy. And then we added the all-new Pressure Luck for those who wanted to make sure that it wasn't a different Whammy. So, yeah, I was intimately involved in the development of that show and bringing it back.
There were 2 Whammy pilots taped, one with Todd Newton, who would eventually get the Whammy hosting job, and one with the original host of Pressure Luck, the late, great Peter Tomarken. Brad fact!
The game with big bucks and whammies is back, bigger and better than ever. Once again, it's time to play Whammy, the all-new Press Your Luck. And now, please welcome our host and head Whammy wrangler, Todd Newton.
Thank you, everybody. Thank you very much. Hi there. And welcome to Whammy, the all-new Press Your Luck. This is the place where our players can spin their way to riches if they can manage to avoid too many run-ins with that dreaded whammy.
What's up?
Good to see you. Charming as ever and hip, too.
The game with big bucks and whammies is back, bigger and better than ever. Once again, it's time to play Whammy, all new Press Your Luck. And now, please welcome our host and head Whammy wrangler, Peter Tomarken.
Thank you. Hi, and welcome to the all-new Press Your Luck. We're back, and we are bad. And I got to tell you, it is such a treat to be back here. I am just thrilled. This is great. You got players who can spin their way to riches if they can avoid the dreaded whammy.
What's up?
Aren't they charming? They are lovely.
Since you worked on the original Pressure Luck, Bob, How thrilling was it for you to watch Peter host Pressure Luck again over 15 years later?
Well, I got to know Peter pretty well over the years, starting with Pressure Luck, and then after Pressure Luck. He'd had a bit of a rough patch in his career, and when I got to GSN, when it first started in 94, we were looking to do a live daily interactive show with people playing games on their telephone keypads, and I recommended Peter to host it because I thought he was a familiar face. He was still young and attractive and had the same energy and enthusiasm that I had remembered from Pressure Luck, which was less than a decade earlier than that. So I lobbied for him. He got hired to host what we called Prime Games, which was a nightly live interactive show where players would call in and play a show called Decades, where they would press a key on their telephone keypad representing their answer about a decade's question. So during what decade did this happen? The 60s, 70s, or 90s? So you would press the 6 for the 60s, the 7 for the 70s, and the 9 for the 90s, and so forth.
Wow, that was unreal. Hi, I'm Peter Tomarkin, I think. Welcome to Game Show Network, and hello to everyone at the Western Cable Show. Hope you're having a good time out there. What you've been watching was a very special retrospective of the history of game shows. And that's what Game Show Network is all about. The best and the brightest of game shows 24 hours a day. Now, if you're a game show fanatic like I am, what we've got is just what you've been looking for, and a whole lot more. Here are some of the best classic shows we'll be offering to you, the viewer. Shows like Wheel of Fortune, Jeopardy, What's My Line, To Tell the Truth, Password, I've Got a Secret, Match Game, Joker's Wild, Tic-Tac-Toe, Newlywed Game, Dating Game, and Beat the Clock. What did I tell you? Pretty impressive, isn't it? And there's more. You can join me every night for Prime Games from 7 p.m. to 11 p.m. Eastern, where we'll bring you the only live interactive games in town. Interactive games like Decades. This interactive game will test your knowledge of things past and present from the 1910s through the 1990s. And the good news is that everyone watching Game Show Network can play our live interactive games from their own living room. It's just as easy as dialing a phone number. Throughout the day, we'll be instructing you how you can register to become a player. Listen and pay attention to what you must do to get your 8-digit PIN number. Once you got that number, you can play our live interactive games forever. And unlike any other games in town, the call you make to play is a toll-free number. So every call you make is free. And believe you me, you'll want to keep calling as often as you can because the prizes you can win are unreal.
So I created that game with one of my colleagues at GSN, and Peter was great. He brought a fan base. We had a very, very limited distribution at that time, but Peter was certainly the face of the network, in addition to our morning hosts, Laura Chambers and Steve Day, who did a show called Club AM. So Peter was a friend of the networks. He was a friend of mine. And part of my dream to bring back Whammy was to bring back Peter to host it. And the management of the network at the time, they were certainly open to Peter. They liked the idea that we were bringing back a classic format, possibly with the classic host. But they also wanted to try out other people, and they didn't want to make it an automatic. So we hired Todd Newton to host a pilot, and we hired Peter to host another pilot. We did 2 pilots of Whammy with different hosts over the course of a couple of days. And we had all agreed internally that we would use both of them, and then we would do focus group testing on both of them. And whoever we felt did a better job, combined with the results of the focus group, would get the gig. So we set up a focus group with the 2 shows running simultaneously in adjacent rooms. And there was one group of people watching Peter's pilot and another group of people watching Todd's pilot next door. And I was executive at the network, and I would go back and forth between the 2 rooms to see what the reaction was to Peter and to Todd. And Peter's score started really high because people recognized him. People associated him with Press Your Luck, which, don't forget, even though it had gone off CBS, it had run a lot on USA Network in repeats. So it was a familiar show to the younger viewers at the time. So they recognized Peter. They liked him. Todd started out pretty high, but a little lower than Peter. Todd was very adept at this format, very talented. He had a great energy to him, a great look. And we knew it was going to be a tight match between the two of them. So as the episodes progressed, Peter's score stayed high but kind of leveled out. And Todd slowly rose from moderate to pretty darn high by the time the end of the show came. And his score exceeded Peter's by the last minute. So we took those results, we discussed them internally, and we felt Peter would be a fine choice. But we thought Todd would get a younger audience. We thought that Todd's energy would sustain the concept. So I had to make the phone call to Peter, telling him that we were going to go with Todd. He was pretty devastated, but he understood that it was a gift that he even got to do the pilot, and he was grateful for it, took it like a champ. And Todd did an amazing job. No looking back. I don't think it would have been any better if we had used Peter, and Todd just really helped redefine that show in ways that perhaps Peter couldn't have. And then the show got renewed for the second season, and that was when I convinced my management to do the Big Bucks Scandal special, which was the retelling of the story from Press Your Luck with Michael Larson, which is a legendary story of the man who memorized the patterns on the board, came in and cleaned out CBS's Kitty at the time, and an investigation took place and all that.
Stop at a Mexican cruise. What's the difference?
On May 19th, 1984, a dubious kind of history was made.
$110,237. You have won more money than anyone's ever even thought about winning on Press Your Luck.
An unemployed ice cream truck driver took a major American television network on a ride that no one watching would ever forget.
And then what I was most proud of, besides that documentary, was staging a reunion on Whammy. Michael Larson had passed away by that time, but his brother was willing to step in and represent Michael. And we got the two original opponents of Michael, Janie and Ed, to return. They were part of the special too, telling their story of that fateful day. And they were thrilled to come back and recreate the match between a Larson family member, if you will, and them.
Hi, everyone, and welcome to a very special episode of Whammy. You know, in 1984, game show history was made when Michael Larson, an unemployed ice cream truck driver, went on Press Your Luck and won $110,237, beating his opponents and the big board. Well, since Michael has passed away, today we've reunited his opponents and invited his brother James to take his place and play Whammy. Let's go.
The game with big bucks and whammies is even bigger and better than ever. It's time to press your luck and play Whammy. Let's meet today's players. Ed Long. In 1984, when he went up against the big board and Michael Larson was a youth pastor. Today, he's a director of an honors program at Central Michigan University. Say hello to Janie Dakin. In 1984, she was a dental assistant. Today, she's the mother of 3 teenagers and sells boats with her husband. And Michael Larson's brother, James Larson, a chemistry teacher, is here to see if he can avoid the whammy and take home big bucks. And now, please welcome our host, Todd Newton.
Thank you very much, Gary Kroger. It's a big day around here. Thank you, everybody. Good to see you. Welcome to a very special episode of Whammy where you can spin your way to some great prizes and some big bucks. But I tell you what, before we get started, let's take a look back to 1984 when Michael Larson made TV history.
Michael, I've never seen anyone press their luck like you are, and you are pressing your luck. 52-851, and he's going again.
Now, we just want to tell you folks at home that due to modern technology, it is completely impossible to figure out the pattern of this board. James Larson is like, well, we'll see about that. I can see the look in his eye. Are the 3 of you ready to press your luck? Yes? Okay.
And to put the icing on the cake, I asked my boss if we could bring Peter back to host part of it. I knew he wouldn't want to disrupt the fact that it was Todd's show, nor should we have. But I felt that Peter had a place in this story. He had narrated the documentary, and he was just such a part of this legendary game show story. So we worked it out that Peter would host the middle round of the show, the second round, and he was just a dream. It was so special to watch Peter and Todd interact with each other because Todd had such admiration for Peter, who had paved the pathway for Todd and many other hosts, frankly. And Peter was authentic. He was having the time of his life. And it was such a proud accomplishment for me. I just looked back at that show and was just so happy about how it came out.
In the famous Dutch lullaby, the three who sailed in the wooden shoe were Winkin, Blinkin, and Nod. Michael says Nod.
So what you just saw there was 1984. One of my heroes, Peter Tamarkin, doing his thing on the original Press Your Luck with our players that are here with us today. And we're going to go ahead and jump right into this pressure round. Ladies and gentlemen, Peter Tamarkin.
Now we can talk eye to eye. See? Would you do me and the entire audience an honor of doing the honor of doing the question round? Would you
I thought you'd never asked.
Peter Tamarkin, everybody.
Thank you. All right, get ready for our question round, where a correct buzz-in answer gets you 3 spins and a correct multiple choice gets you 1 spin. Just to take you back a bit, all these questions have something to do with the year you were first on Press Your Luck. We're talking about 1984, Mr. Orwell's year. All right, here come the first question. The Stay Puft Marshmallow Man and Gozer were just 2 of the enemies Dan Aykroyd and Ghostbusters. And Bill Murray had to fight when they got called in. What 1984 hit comedy was it? Ghostbusters, Gremlins, or Stripes? Ed?
Ghostbusters.
Ghostbusters, says Ed.
Definitely Ghostbusters.
Yes, Ghostbusters is right. James. Ed gets a spin. James gets a spin. Janie gets the big 3.
And by the way, the Larsons won again. But this time it was honest. There was no manipulation going on because there couldn't be. The patterns of the board slides were now completely random, so there was absolutely no way to track them. In a completely legitimate match, the Larsons came out on top again.
2 spins. Remember, if you pass, they go over here to James. What are you going to do?
I need to go.
Okay.
I need to go. All right, big one, let's go.
Stop at $700. All right, Ed. You're up to $1,200. You trail James by a little over $5,400. You have 1 spin. You need something that gives you at least that, something that gives you another spin, or land on that big bank. That's if you're going to press your luck. If you pass, it goes to James. If he nails a whammy, then you walk out of here our champion. What are you going to do?
Going.
He's going. Here we go. Who's it going to be? The big rematch?
Okay, big buddy.
Stop it. Move 1 space 2. A hot air balloon adventure, Tiffany lamps, or the double whammy?
I'll take the hot air balloon adventure.
The hot air balloon adventure. Let's see if it's enough. It's worth $12.25. Not going to do it. James, Mr. Larson, the legacy continues. What is it? It's genetic. $6,695. Here's Gary Crawford to tell you what you won.
Congratulations, James. You've won Yamaha's dynamic Clavinova digital piano. Superior craftsmanship creating superb sound and touch. Classic shape and finish of an authentic baby grand brings elegance to any decor. Perfection dressed in black from Yamaha. Your grand total $6,695.
Wow. Janie, thank you so much for being here. Hope you had a good time. James, thank you. Not quite what your brother picked up, but we hope you enjoyed yourself. The legacy continues. Ed, pleasure meeting you, my friend. And Peter Tamarkin, my hero. There he is. Folks, thank you so much for being a part of history. Stay right where you are. You know, the big show's coming up next. Big bucks. The Press Your Luck scandal happens right here, right now. Find out what really happened back in '84. Bye-bye.
One element I always found interesting about Whammy is, on the original Press Your Luck, the squares on the board all changed at the same time. And during the first round on Whammy, the exact same thing occurred. When the squares changed prizes or cash amounts, they all changed at the same time. However, during the second round on Whammy, the squares didn't change simultaneously, but rather at a sporadic pace, making it more difficult to follow the board. I was wondering if it was your decision, Bob, to make the squares during the second round board on Whammy not follow the traditional method and change sporadically instead. And was there a specific reason for this change?
I was involved in that decision, yes. I can't take full credit for it because every decision we made was done in concert with Fremantle, who owned the show. My boss wanted something to ramp up in round 2. So the idea did come up about further randomizing not just the slides themselves, but the pacing of them, the timing of them changing. And so we tried it. It was disconcerting a little bit to some viewers because there was a certain predictability and regularity to the movement on the first round and in the original show. But I don't think it hurt anything. I think it actually helped create more excitement because you simply did not know when something would change anywhere on the board. We also changed the configuration of the board so it wasn't this rectangular shape, which I think also added to the fun and the excitement of it.
Whammy featured a brand new addition in round 2, and that is the double whammy, in which not only did the whammy steal all the contestants' money, but he would also mess with the contestants by dropping something on their head, like pizza dough, ping pong balls, snow, grass, or popcorn.
All right, here we go. No whammies! No whammies! No whammies! Stop! No!
Stop at a double whammy!
Here, sheep. Come on. Whammy had a little lamb whose fleece was white as snow. Wherever did Whammy went? Whammy made up with the dough.
That's not a good feeling, is it, Brandon? That's not a good feeling.
No whammies!
Stop at a double whammy!
And now here's Whammy with the whammy weather.
Thank you, Jan. It appears we'll have patches of hail moving in today, especially around
your money.
Stop at a double whammy! They waited just the right amount of time, and then they got you. All right, Simone.
I'm going to press my luck with one eye now.
And she wants to press her luck. Here we go.
All right. Please, Lord, give me something good.
Stop at a double whammy. Gretchen, your first whammy.
Big bucks, no whammy, stop.
Stop at a double whammy, Gromit.
All the losers may try, no one makes pizza pie like the whammy.
Gromit, that's your fourth whammy. Unfortunately, you're out of the game, but man, if you didn't give us some laughs. All right.
So, Bob, who came up with the idea for the double whammy, and were there ever any thoughts of calling it something else because viewers might think double whammy may mean the contestant gets 2 whammies?
Yeah, we had all those discussions. I believe the double whammy was a Fremantle idea to ramp up the pace and add some humor to the show. At first, I wasn't crazy about it because I didn't feel that Whammy should be a show about messy or goopy or anything like that. I felt that the contestants should be clean when they left the stage, even if they got whammies. And I felt it was more about the whammy animation than anything else. But we tried it out, and it was kind of fun, dropping pizza dough on them and feathers and stuff like that. We stayed away from the goopiest of slime and stuff like that. We didn't want it to look like Double Dare. But yeah, there was some talk about, do people get 2 whammies? But it was pretty easy to explain when it happened. So that, I don't think, became a reason to change it. And it was already a familiar phrase that we thought was completely appropriate for the show. So we went with it, and I think that was a good call.
Season 2 of Whammy offered contestants the opportunity to win a new car by collecting both halves of the car key. And one contestant by the name of Brett actually did win the car. Brad fact.
Now,
Let me lay this out here. This is a very interesting situation, John. You have one spin. If you press your luck, he's like, I know. If you press your luck, you need something that gives you another spin to stay in the game. If you pass it and Brett whammies, you will be the winner with $1,900. So the choice is yours. What are you going to do?
$22,000. That's a long ways to go to try to catch up to her. I got to pass it.
Now, Brett, this is a spin we must take. You have possession of that Suzuki Aereo SX. We're going to take this spin. If you avoid the whammy, you will drive out of here in that brand new car, in addition to everything else you got. Okay? All you have to do is avoid the whammy one more time. Are you ready?
I
Are you
guess.
sure? Okay. All right. Brett, good luck to you. Here comes your spin. Stop at a red open pinion. You win the car. You win the car. You did it, Brett. You did it. $26,522 in cash and prizes. A beautiful new Suzuki Aereo SX. Gary Kroger, tell this lovely young lady about it, sir.
Brett, you've won a Sony PlayStation with games and a collection of beautiful Ansel Adam prints. A red opal pendant. You've got $7,750 in cash. And most importantly, you'll be driving home in a car. It's the sporty Suzuki Aereo SX with 145 horsepower, in-gas 6-disc CD changer, and aluminum alloy wheels. Your grand total is $26,522.
Patricia, thank you so much. Very nice to meet you. John, good luck to you. Thank you for meeting. Thank you. All right, thank you. Brett! Would you join us right down here, please? All right, grab his arm. Be careful. Let's step right down here. You know this guy in your car?
I'm going to miss this car.
You're staying here. What? Look at this. Very nice. Over $26,000, including this new Suzuki Aereo SX. Congratulations. Drive safely, all right?
However, later on that season, Whammy had a tournament of champions featuring 9 of the biggest winners from both seasons 1 and 2, but Brett was not part of that tournament.
Hi, everybody. I'm Todd Newton, and welcome to Whammy's Tournament of Champions. Now, at the end of the week, one of these 9 players will drive away in this brand new Suzuki Aereo SX. But in order to get there, players will have to beat the Whammy in the ultimate quest for big bucks. First 3 players, are you ready? Let's go.
Hi, my name is Stacy. The last time I was here, I won over $24,000. This time, I'm taking the car.
My name is Jack. Last time I won over $15,000, and I came in for one reason only, become the Whammy-weight champion.
Hi, my name is Don. Last time I was here, I won over $8,000. Now I'm back for big bucks and the car, man.
Whammy's Tournament of Champions starts right now.
The game with big bucks and whammies is even bigger and better than ever. It's time to press your luck with our special Tournament of Champions Whammy. And now, please welcome our host, Todd Newton.
Thank you, Gary Kroger. Thank you, everybody. Good to see you. All right, a big day, folks. Welcome to Whammy's Tournament of Champions. Now, today, just for you folks at home, we have assembled some of Whammy's biggest winners from previous episodes. These are players that won huge stacks of money. I mean, huge. And probably spent every single penny. All right, now, players, here's how it works. The winner of today's game will come back at the end of the week. That, of course, is in addition to everything you win today. You'll play in the final game at the end of the week for a chance to win the Suzuki Aereo SX. All right?
So is the reason why Brett didn't participate in the Tournament of Champions because the winner received the same Suzuki Aereo SX car that she had won during her original appearance?
I don't recall the parameters for choosing the contestants for the Tournament of Champions, but I don't think it was based on any measurable metric. I don't think we said the highest scorers or the most prizes or the most questions right or anything like that. I think it was just people who we felt were outstanding players who we wanted to give another chance to. So it's very likely that if somebody had already won a car, we wouldn't want to include them in a tournament where you could win a car because it's kind of a been there, done that. And if they've already won a car, they chances are wouldn't be bent out of shape that they don't get a chance to win a second car. Whereas the players who we did choose had not won a car, so they would be more excited about winning one. I can't swear to the actual decisions, but it wasn't like the Jeopardy Tournament of Champions where it was based on a solid measurement of their performance.
And the last Whammy question I have is, was there any specific reason why some episodes of Whammy featured the traditional 4 questions during the question round, and some episodes featured 5 questions during the question round?
I don't remember that we changed it. I was always a believer in the 4-question model that had been on the original show. It also works at the Passover Seder. So I think that that's something that I always believed in. I don't remember varying from that. But if we did, we probably decided that it wasn't going to generate the right number of spins. We had a fail-safe in the question rounds, which is we had, let's call it 4 questions. And then if there were too many spins that had been earned in the first 3 questions, I think it was 12 or more, then we would go to a really hard question for the 4th one. So there was likely not to be somebody who won 3 spins. And if we had very few spins given away in the first 3 questions, I think it was fewer than 8, we would go to a super easy question that was likely to get the 3 spins plus the other 2 copycat answers. So we would get 5 more spins out of that. And that was a decision we would make on the fly going into the last question. So if after 3, the totals hit the high threshold or the low threshold, we would make a pivot and go to the appropriate question if necessary. If we were in that middle range, I think it was 8 to 12, we would stick with the question that we had planned.
Next, I want to talk about Boom, which was a primetime game show hosted by Tom Papa that aired on Fox during the summer of 2015. Boom involved teams of 3 answering trivia questions in which there are multiple correct answers, but only one incorrect answer. And the goal was to avoid choosing the one incorrect answer. However, the catch was, each answer choice was represented by a wire on a bomb. And if the contestant cut the wrong wire, the bomb would explode and they would be covered by some substance, like maple syrup, creamed spinach, blueberry slushy, or refried beans. Brad fact. Bob, you are both a co-executive producer and a writer on the show, and I've got to say, I think Boom definitely deserved at least a second season because it's certainly one of my favorite primetime game shows of the 21st century. Now, Boom aired a year before the primetime game show Boom, pun intended, officially took off. So, Bob, do you think if Boom was in production a couple years later, it might have had a better chance of becoming more successful?
I think Boom was a very good show. I was worried when it was picked up that it might be pulled off the air if there was ever any type of public explosion or terrorist act, because even though it was cartoonish and light, the world gets serious every once in a while. And I thought, is this really a smart move to put on a show about explosions? And I was wrong about that. We lasted all 10 weeks and even had a couple of reruns in the middle. And there was never a preemption for anything, thank God, that would have caused a public embarrassment or suggestion that the show somehow encouraged explosions. Given that caveat, the show performed what today would be more than enough of an audience to get a pickup. But in those days, if a show got a 0.7 or a 0.8 rating, it was regarded as a flop. Today's shows getting a 0.3 and 0.4 get renewed. So, yeah, I mean, we could always play Monday Morning Quarterback and look back on it. But I had a wonderful time doing that show with Jeff Aploff, who is one of my favorite producers and a dear friend to this day. I started working with him on Don't Forget the Lyrics many years ago. He's, for my money, one of the best, if not the best, game show producer in town. And I got to work with Dick Clark Productions, which was also a nice coming home for me because I had worked with them years prior on Greed. It was an interesting development. I think it turned out to be a very good show. It was fun. I liked Tom Papa a lot. He was a delight to work with. And he brought a certain humor and lightness to the show that I think actually worked toward offsetting that idea that we're exploding bombs. It was fun. I wish it had continued, certainly.
The substances that exploded from each bomb, were they actually the substances that Tom Papa announced they were? Or were they just slime-like substances that were colored differently and Tom just made up what the substance was based on the color?
More the latter than the former. We didn't really waste any tremendous amount of food on that show. We had a whole team of game show chemists working under the set, crafting these concoctions that were meant to look like blueberry jelly or whatever it was. But it was a color that represented something, but I don't think it was ever exactly what we said it was.
Good job. 20 seconds left.
All right, here we go. Disney, Toy Story, yellow, I'm going.
Cutting yellow, Toy Story. Was it a buck?
1.
My kids hate me right now.
Contestant failed.
Tomato sauce. Carmine, pizza sauce all over the place. Which 3 of these are do's of gym etiquette on emilypost.com? Talk it out. Which are do's?
Definitely wear socks, green.
Cutting green, wear socks.
2, 1. Contestant fail.
Looks like pesto to me.
Yeah!
15 seconds. All you have to do is cut one more.
Okay, I'm totally lost here. Frasier, I don't remember a theme song, Married with Children,
Okay.
but you know what? I'm going to go with green.
6 seconds.
I'm going to go with green, Married with
5
Children.
seconds. Cutting green. Married
no.
with children.
2, 1. Team fail.
Oh, no.
Oh, my God.
Oh, that's terrible. The Alfredo sauce. Oh, man, I really was pulling for you guys.
I'm going to cut yellow just because yield has 3.
4 seconds.
Well,
Cutting
3,
yellow, school crossing
2,
sign for
1.
$15,000.
Contestant fail.
The maple syrup bomb. You got tagged with the maple syrup bomb. Which 6 of these are real names of collections sold by Spanx? Talk it out.
Oh boy, I mean, I'm not gonna lie, I have no idea. So, I mean, undetectables.
Common sense your way through it.
I
You
mean,
can do
I'm
it.
assuming that underwear type of thing.
Right.
I'm gonna go, purple.
Cutting purple,
3,
undetectable.
2, 1. Correct.
Good job. 45 seconds left.
Along those lines, thongs of joy, another underwear.
Thongs
type
of
of
joy.
thing.
3,
Cutting green,
2,
thongs of joy.
1.
No!
Contestant fail.
No, the yellow mustard bomb. Oh, man.
I've always been curious, how did the mechanics of the bombs actually work?
That is way above my pay grade. There was a special effects team. I've never worked on a show with so many experts in special effects as we had on that show. There was a factory of engineers and designers who would design the inner workings of the bomb and feed in the liquid and cause it to explode on command. and cause it to explode to the right extent. You didn't want to knock people over with the explosion of the liquid, but you wanted it to cover them enough that it made good TV and a funny visual. So if it made a little stain on their shirt, that wasn't fun. And, you wanted it to get close to their face, but they were wearing goggles. So it was a process. We did a lot of rehearsals to make sure that the level of the explosion was appropriate and funny. But I think we got there. I think it was great.
Boom involved trivia questions that had either 3, 4, 5, 6, or 7 correct answers, depending on the size of the bomb and the dollar amount being played for. So as a writer, is it harder to write questions that have multiple correct answers because the material might be limited? Or is it easier because you don't have to go through the hassle of creating too many viable incorrect answers?
Well, that show was a challenge because you had to have multiple correct answers. And it is harder to write questions with a lot of correct answers than one correct answer. And the original design of the show was that there would be one correct answer, all the rest were wrong. And every time you eliminated a wrong answer, you were safe. And the idea was to avoid cutting the wire of the right answer. That's how it was played in Israel. And I felt very strongly, and so did Jeff Aploff, that that's backwards, that you should get rewarded for finding correct answers, and you should get punished by finding the one wrong answer. And that took on a very long and protruded negotiation with the Israeli creators of the show through Dick Clark Productions, because they wanted what they wanted, and it worked very well over there, and they felt that we were turning it upside down. But we felt very strongly that an American audience would not react well to you got the right answer, so you got blown up. So we negotiated that for quite a while. We did win out, but now we created a much more difficult writing scenario because you had to find questions that had multiple correct answers, some of which would be pretty obvious so that they would get a few right, but at least a couple that seemed borderline, could be right, could be wrong. And the wrong one could be right, could be wrong. So you didn't want the wrong one to be obvious, and you didn't want all the right ones to be obvious. So you had to have a gradation of difficulty and of how obvious it was.
Well, especially with the mega money bomb at the end of the game, you had to come up with a question with 10 viable answers in which 7 of them were correct. So that must have been a writing challenge, I presume.
Yep, that was difficult.
Remember, we've got 90 seconds on the clock this time. Goggle up and we'll take a look at the possible answers. Red, St. Louis Rams. Blue, New Orleans Saints. Yellow, San Francisco 49ers. Green, Green Bay Packers.
Yes.
Purple, Miami Dolphins. Orange, Washington Redskins. White, Jacksonville Jaguars. Pink, Chicago Bears.
Down Bears.
Gold, Dallas Cowboys. And platinum, Oakland Raiders. All right, you are 90 seconds away from $240,000. You've got the Uber fan club out there rooting for you. All you have to do is cut the 7 correct answers to this question. Of these NFL franchises, which 7 were worth more than $1 billion as of 2013, according to Forbes? Talk it out.
Gold, Dallas Cowboys. They're worth the most, I believe.
Cutting gold,
3,
Dallas
2,
Cowboys.
1. Correct.
Redskins. Washington Redskins.
Minute
Washington
22 left.
Redskins.
3, 2, 1. Correct.
San Francisco 49ers. Yellow, San Francisco 49ers.
3, 2, 1. Correct.
Chicago Bears. Pink.
Cutting pink.
Pink.
Chicago Bears.
Bears.
3, 2, 1. Correct.
Saints. I'm going to go with Saints. Super Bowls. They've won Super Bowls recently. Saints.
Worth more than $1 billion.
$1 billion.
Cutting blue.
Blue.
Saints.
3, 2, 1. Correct.
Good job. Good job. Miami. I think it's Green Bay. Miami. I think it's Green. You don't think it's Green Bay? Green. Miami. You don't think it's Green Bay? We got
45
it's
seconds.
Bay. It's green.
Cutting
Green Bay. Green Bay.
Cutting green. Green Bay Packers for the Upper Peninsula.
3, 2, 1. Correct.
Nice shot. Dolphins. Miami Dolphins. Miami Dolphins.
Seconds left.
Miami Dolphins.
There's one more to cut.
You don't think it's Oakland? No. Dude, they're no good. Miami Dolphins.
One more to cut.
It's Miami.
We've got 25 seconds left.
What do you think? It's Miami.
Worth more than $1 billion.
Miami's a big market. It's Miami.
Yeah, you're right. It's the biggest market.
It's the biggest market. It's an international city.
I mean,
17 seconds left.
Miami.
Let's just go for it.
Welcome to
15
Miami.
seconds. Cutting purple Miami Dolphins for $240,000.
3, 2, 1. Diffuse.
Now I want to talk about a really exciting project that you are involved with. Along with fellow TV producer Howard Blumenthal, you are the co-founder and co-collection curator of the National Archives of Game Show History at the Strong National Museum of Play, which is located in Rochester, New York, and is home to the National Toy Hall of Fame. When I first heard about this endeavor, I was so excited because for years I've been saying that there should be a museum devoted to game shows. So Bob, talk about how the idea for the National Archives of Game Show History came about and the steps you took to make it happen.
Well, it all started with Howard Blumenthal. Howard and I are the co-founders of this project. Howard is the one who made the initial contact with the Strong Museum. Howard, as you probably know, was the creator and producer of Where in the World is Carmen Sandiego, which is one of the most clever game shows, I would say, of all time, and was involved in a lot of the early development and production of the Nickelodeon shows when that became a major force in kids' entertainment. His dad was one of the original producers of Concentration in the 50s. So Howard grew up at NBC in New York and running around the sets as a young child. I'm jealous of that. I didn't have sets to run around when I was a kid because my parents were nurses. So Howard has this in his blood. And he has a collection of some memorabilia, mostly from the quiz show Scandal era, sitting in boxes in his basement. And he felt it was time to find a permanent home for this incredible research material. And he approached the folks at the Strong Museum. And he said, basically, look, you do video games, you do parlor games, you do board games, you do dolls, you do pinball machines, you do all types of play. Why not game shows? They said, we'd love to do game shows. We just aren't connected in that space. So he connected them with me, and the two of us talked with them for months and months and introduced them to people in the game show space who have a lot to talk about and a lot of stuff that they have kept that are museum-worthy pieces, both memorabilia, documents and rundowns and scripts and set designs and music and things like that, and also big props like the things that I collect. So they decided that it was worth their while to invest in this idea. And we announced the National Archives of Game Show History, which is going to be initially a research facility online where we're going to get donations of materials where researchers, historians, people who are just curious about game shows can go to look things up and study and learn and understand who did what and when and where and how and why. Part 2 is a series of video interviews that we're conducting with many of the pioneers who created, developed, produced, directed, wrote, created music for, set designs, all of the different disciplines that go into game shows. And those will be made available to the online crowd for the Strong Museum and also to people who visit the museum. And ultimately, they are going to have an exhibit space to house a lot of the physical props and memorabilia, much of which I'll be donating to them, that recount decades and decades of iconic game shows.
Is there a date as to when the actual exhibit space in the museum will be open?
They don't have an exact date. My best guess is it's 2 years away. They've got to build a space out for it. There will be a traveling exhibit as part of that, so it will be shared with other museums around the country. But it involves fundraising and things like that, so it's not like mounting a game show and you have to be on the air in 3 weeks.
You have so many game show artifacts, from thousands of game show taping tickets to hundreds of game show board games to the original any number board used on The Price is Right. I've got to know, how did you acquire the original any number board?
I wish it was a glamorous story, but I was working at CBS. They were looking to rebuild that game. It was the very first game ever played on the show 50 years ago. And they were looking to modernize the set piece and make it a little more contemporary looking. So they retired the board, and not knowing else what to do with it, they were hauling it out to the trash. And I learned about this and I said, well, hey, can I have it? I had an office at Television City at the time, so it was just as simple to move it upstairs to the third floor. And they said, well, we don't want it. We're getting rid of it. Sure. So they moved it up to my office. And when I left CBS, I took it with me. And in those days, there really wasn't any call to action to save set pieces. When they weren't needed anymore, they were just thrown away. So I was able to get that and several other iconic pieces from various shows just because they were headed for the dumpster. It's a little different now. Now things are kept and preserved, and I hope eventually some of it will go to the Strong Museum because that's a better place for it than my garage at home. But I'm very proud of the stuff that I rescued, and I'm even prouder that I can give it a legacy home that people can enjoy them for time immemorial.
Well, now I'm curious. If you don't mind sharing, Bob, what other game show set pieces do you have in your personal collection?
Well, there's a few things from Family Feud that I have, including what was the original face-off podium that was adapted for the 80s version, and I had it restored to have lights and sound in it again. I've got the letter J from, I think it was the second set of the current version of Jeopardy, where there were huge letters spelling out Jeopardy across the back of the set. That was just an eBay purchase. They were auctioning off the letters on eBay, and I bought the J and had that lit up as well, so that works again. And I've got the two original showcase podiums from The Price is Right as well, which were being retired, and they were about to trash them and gave them to me, and various items from a variety of lesser-known shows, but a few little props and things like that.
Well, I'm excited to see which pieces of your game show memorabilia end up at the Strong National Museum of Play, and I look forward to seeing the continued work that you, as well as others, put into the National Archives of game show history. It truly is a wonderful project, and I can't wait to see it progress. But right now, Bob, we have once again reached my favorite portion of the game show, and I always love creating games for professional game creators to play. So it's once again a thrill that I get to create and host a Bradley Clarke original game for you to play. It's time for the game of the day.
Game of the day.
And as I said at the beginning of the episode, the focus is only on one classic game this time around. And this is the second time I am playing this game for the game of the day with a guest on the game show. You were the executive in charge of the ABC reboot of Match Game during the 1990 to 1991 television season. And now, over 30 years later in the year 2023, the only thing you'll be in charge of is the answers that you give to the questions that I wrote. It's time to play Mutual Friends Match Game. Mutual Friend Match Game. And before I explain the rules, can you believe it has now been over 30 years since Match Game 90 originally aired?
It is hard to believe. It's a great memory for me. The association with that show is one of the things that I really, really enjoyed a lot in my career. Getting to work with some of the classic people, the Goodson organization. Ross Schaefer was a delight. It was such a fun day in the studio. Really great.
I've always wondered, the pilot for Match Game 90 was played almost identical to Match Game PM and the Match Game portion of Match Game Hollywood Squares Hour, in that there were 3 rounds of questions, and the contestant with the most matches after round 3 won the game. The only difference was that all 6 celebrities played every question, even if a contestant matched them previously, meaning a contestant can earn more than the traditional 6 points. However, when Match Game 90 went to air, the game featured some new additions that were not aspects in the previous versions of Match Game, including keeping the concept from the pilot of all 6 celebrities playing during round 2, even if the contestant matched them during round 1, playing for cash during the main game instead of for points, and introducing the matchup game played after both rounds 1 and 2, in which contestants could build up their score by matching answers to simple fill-in-the-blank statements with one celebrity of their choosing against the clock. Brad fact! So Bob, did you have any role in suggesting a change in format after the Match Game 90 pilot was filmed? And did you create any of the new format changes for Match Game 90?
Yes, I was. I was very involved in all of that. I was working with Michael Brockman, who was my boss at ABC, and the incredible team at Mark Goodson Productions, which was headed up by Jonathan Goodson at the time, and a great staff of people, many of whom I'm still friends with. Yeah, that was a joy. There were many little tweaks that we did to that show that I think honored the authenticity of the format, but brought it up to date in various ways.
And I have always loved the design of the Match Game 90 Star Wheel, in which the contestants spun the arrow instead of spinning the wheel itself. So Bob, who was the one who came up with the design for the Match Game 90 Star Wheel?
I thought that was one of the most clever designs in the history of game shows, and certainly in the history of game show wheels. It was Jim Agazy, who just passed away, who was the set designer on that.
And by 1990, we had seen our fair share of wheels on game shows, so for Match Game 90 to reinvent the wheel, you might say, it really was a new and exciting game show element for its time.
Yeah, I love that wheel. Love that wheel.
Well, unfortunately, the Star Wheel will not be making an appearance during today's game, but in a way, a few of your game show industry friends will be making an appearance, which I'm very excited about. So here's how we play Mutual Friend Match Game. I have channeled my inner Dick DiBartolo, who was a question writer on both the original version of the Match Game in the 60s, plus the more well-known 70s version of Match Game, and I cleverly created 5 original Bradley Clarke Match Game questions. The 5 questions are currently in front of me and are labeled A, B, C, D, and E. Bob, you'll pick a letter, I'll read the question attached to that letter, and as you know, your job is to fill in the questions blank with an answer. Now, this is why the game is called Mutual Friend Match Game, and why I said at the beginning of the episode that the game of the day will involve 4 additional people. Before the show, I sent the same 5 questions to 4 of our mutual friends, all of whom have also been my special guests on previous episodes of the game show. First, game show producer and judge on ABC's The $100,000 Pyramid, John Ricci Jr. Next, game show producer and creator of the home game, aka, also known as, Aaron Solomon. Then the host of the classic Nickelodeon game show Nick Arcade, Phil Moore. And finally, one of the writers on the ABC primetime version of Match Game starring Alec Baldwin, and the winning contestant during my previous game of Mutual Friend Match Game, Jason Antoniewicz. I asked our 4 friends to fill in the blanks themselves, and all of their answers are officially locked in and will be revealed for the first time once you give your answer to each question, Bob. So John, Aaron, Phil, and Jason are the panelists for each question, and the goal throughout the game will be to match their answers. You'll play all 5 questions, and by the end of the game, if you've scored 6 matches or more, you will be deemed a winner. Those are all the rules. Bob, after working behind the scenes on Match Game 90 over 30 years ago, are you ready to finally become a Match Game contestant?
Yes, I am.
Then let's play Mutual Friend Match Game. And Bob, to really get us in the Match Game mood, I think a proper Match Game introduction is needed. So in my best Gene Wood voice, here I go. Get ready to match your friends. Judge on ABC's The $100,000 Pyramid, John Ricci Jr. Game creator and producer, Aaron Solomon. from Nick Arcade, Phil Moore, and game show writer and producer Jason Antoniewicz, as we play the Friend Frenzy No Money Mutual Friend Match Game. And here's the star of Mutual Friend Match Game, Bradley Clarke. Thank you, Gene Wood, and welcome to Mutual Friend Match Game. Now let's say hello to our player, Bob Boden. Bob, it's a pleasure to have you on Mutual Friend Match Game today.
Thank you.
Well, Bob, here on Mutual Friend Match Game, you'll have 5 opportunities to match as many of the dinglings or creatures from the Dark Lagoon or whatever else you'd like to call them as possible. And if you can score 6 matches or more, you will not only be a Mutual Friend Match Game winner, but you'll also be a 2-time winner of the Game of the Day here on the game show. So, Bob, which letters question would you like to start with? A, B, C, D, or E?
Well, in honor of ABC, let's go A.
A it is, and away we go. TV Bob said, I've been working in the game show industry for so long, I remember when the Whammy was blank. And although all of our panelists' answers have already been placed into their slots for every question, Bob, I'll still give you a few seconds to think about your answer. Plus, it also allows us to listen to some of Match Game 90's panelist writing music, which is always a joy. All right, once again, the question. TV Bob said, I've been working in the game show industry for so long, I remember when the Whammy was blank.
I remember when the Whammy was Adam.
I remember when the Whammy was Adam, as in Adam and Eve, I'm presuming. Very intellectual answer, but let's see if it matches any of our panelists. John Ricci Jr. said, I remember when the Whammy was in diapers. So no match there. Aaron Solomon said, I remember when the Whammy was the devil, as in the devil from Second Chance, Pressure Luck's precursor.
Right.
Phil Moore said, I remember when the Whammy was not a thief.
Okay.
And Jason Antoniewicz said, I remember when the Whammy was on Beat the Odds.
Oh my, I went back further than them.
I know, well, you literally went back to day one.
Well, Beat the Odds and the Second Chance reference are really good game show references, so I applaud that. I just went too far back.
I applaud those references too, so good job, Aaron and Jason. So unfortunately, you did not get any matches on your first question, but don't fear because you still have 4 more questions to go. Next up, would you like B, C, D, or E?
Well, let's stick with the ABC philosophy and go B.
All right, B it is. Dumb Dora is so dumb.
How dumb is she?
When she went to the drive-through ATM, she was surprised when the machine dispensed money instead of dispensing blank. Dumb Dora is so dumb. When she went to the drive-through ATM, she was surprised when the machine dispensed money instead of dispensing blank.
I'll say soap.
Your answer is soap. Okay. Let's see what our panelists wrote down. John said fast food. That's probably the answer I would have said if I was playing. But let's see if we get soap from Aaron, Phil, or Jason. Aaron said dispensing gas. Phil also said fast food. And Jason said dispensing tellers.
Oh. All right. I was close to gas, but I should have thought fast food.
Not a problem at all. You still have 3 questions left. You need 6 matches to win, and there's 12 matches up for grabs. So, Bob, I think I know what letter you're going to pick next, but for game show legality reasons, which letter's question would you like to choose now?
Well, G, Bradley, I had A and then B. Let's go C.
I'm glad my ESP is also working during this game because that's exactly what I thought you would do, Bob. All right, here comes question C. Captain Kangaroo said, last Saturday night, I decided to go out to the bar with my pal Mr. Green Jeans. And let me tell you, the bar we went to was blank. Captain Kangaroo said, last Saturday night, I decided to go out to the bar with my pal, Mr. Green Jeans. And let me tell you, the bar we went to was blank. Bob, how do you fill in that blank?
The bar we went to was an ice cream bar.
An ice cream bar. That's certainly my type of bar, but let's see if our panel agreed. John said the bar we went to was a gay bar.
Of course he would.
Aaron said the bar we went to was hopping. I think that is the definitive answer for the question. The bar we went to was hopping. Of course, hopping is a play on the word kangaroo in Captain Kangaroo's name because kangaroos hop. Phil said the bar we went to was full of kids. So you were on the right track by saying ice cream bar, but unfortunately that's not a match. And Jason also said the bar we went to was hopping.
Okay.
So Bob, unfortunately you still have 0 matches to your credit, but the game is certainly not over because there are still 2 questions left, 8 matches are up for grabs, and you only need 6 of them to win.
I got to get 3 out of 4 on the next 2.
This is true, but as you know, anything is possible when playing match game. All right, are we sticking with the same question picking method or are we switching it up at the very end?
Okay, let's reverse my philosophy on this ABC thing and let's go E.
All right, hopefully the strategy works by going with E instead of D. And here comes the E question. At the Wrestlers Farmers Market, you can find some of your favorite wrestling stars selling fresh vegetables at their stands. There's just one problem. Every wrestler is only selling varieties of blank. At the Wrestlers Farmers Market, you can find some of your favorite wrestling stars selling vegetables at their stands. There's just one problem. Every wrestler is only selling varieties of blank. Bob, what's your answer?
I guess I'll go spinach.
Spinach is your answer, okay? Let's see how the panel did for you this time, Bob. Starting off with John. He said broccoli. Aaron said squash. I think squash is the definitive answer for this question.
That's clever.
Phil also said squash. And according to Jason, at the Wrestlers Farmers Market, every wrestler is only selling varieties of squash. So Bob, unfortunately at the end of the 4th question, you still have 0 matches, which means you cannot win this game of Mutual Friend Match Game since there are only 4 matches up for grabs in the 5th and final question, and you need 6 matches to win. However, we are going to play question D, and I have complete confidence in you that you are going to score at least 1 match. You are not finishing Mutual Friend Match Game with a score readout of 0 on your podium.
All right, there you go.
Here comes question D, Bob. Good luck. The Statue of Liberty is having trouble finding love, so she recently created a dating app profile. In her bio, the Statue of Liberty wrote, "Looking for a man who is always willing to hold my blank." The Statue of Liberty is having trouble finding love, so she recently created a dating app profile. In her bio, the Statue of Liberty wrote, "Looking for a man who is always willing to hold my blank." Bob, for the final time, how do you fill in the blank?
It's got to be Torch.
Torch is your answer. And Bob, I think you might be hearing some dings in your future. I'm just saying. But let's start off by revealing John's answer. He said, steel boobs. The ever-popular boobs answer to a match game question. Unfortunately, that does not match your answer of Torch, but Aaron said, Torch, so you're on the board, Bob. You have your first match.
Oh, finally.
Next up, we have Phil, and his answer is Torch, so you doubled your score, Bob. You have 2 matches.
All right.
And Jason also said Torch, so that's your 3rd match, Bob.
I'm halfway to the non-win that I hoped for. If I'd only thought of squash, I'd be a winner right now.
this is true, but here's the thing, Bob. I would love to invite you back in the near future for a game redemption episode, which means you will return to play Mutual Friend Match Game yet again to try and secure the victory I know you deserve. Plus, I'll give you the chance to play a brand new game as well.
I appreciate that. I will take you up on it.
Perfect. And now is the game of the day, Mutual Friend Match Game. Mutual Friend Match Game. Well, Bob, getting the opportunity to talk with you about your amazing game show career once was such a pleasure. But being able to chat with you about game shows for a second time is a true honor. So thank you very much for once again being my special guest on the game show.
I was happy to do it, and I will always be a part of your fan base, and maybe one day I'll be a guest again.
Well, I can guarantee that you will be a guest on the game show again, and specifically on a future game redemption episode, where not only will you play Mutual Friend Match Game again, as well as play the brand new game that I will create for you, but I'll also have a whole new bunch of questions related to your impressive game show career that I would love for you to answer.
Terrific. And thank you for plugging the game show archives at the Strong Museum. I'm very proud of that.
It was my pleasure. I can't wait to see it grow even more, and I look forward to continuing our conversation about the National Archives of Game Show History during your next appearance here on the Game Show. All right, Bob, take care, and once again, thank you so much for joining me on the Game Show for a second time.
My pleasure, Bradley. Take care. You did a great job.
Well, those words mean a lot coming from you, Bob, so thank you so much. All right, bye-bye.
See ya.
And before I sign off, it's time for another Bradley Parody. Bradley Parody. This is the segment of the game show in which I create a parody song about an aspect of this episode. And because Bob has worked on so many game shows over his incredible career, it truly was a tough decision picking just one game show to highlight for this Bradley parody. However, a light was bouncing around in my head, a button was pressed, and the light stopped on the game show I decided to choose. Press your luck. So, to the tune of You're the One That I Want, performed by John Travolta and Olivia Newton-John in one of my all-time favorite movies, Grease, this is Bradley Parody number 20. Yes, Bradley Parody number 20, titled Money's What I Want. I've got spins, there for the big board, and I want its money. But one thing I don't want to land on, his name's Whammy. I stop on big bucks, $4,000 and a spin. Now I face a decision. Do I pass my spins, or do I press my luck? What is gonna help me win? I should really pass, but I decide I'm gonna spin. Money's what I want. Money is what I want. No, 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 no whammies. Money's what I want. Money is what I want. No, 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 no whammies. Money's what I want. Money is what I want. No, 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 no whammies. For me, please. In the air is so much tension as the light bounces around. I wait for the precise moment to press the button down. I stop on $5,000. Out comes a big screen, and I'm in the lead. Now I have to use my brain. If I go one more and hit a whammy, goodbye money. All my dreams go down the drain, but I'm greedy. I press my luck, I'm so insane. Money's what I want. Money is what I want. No, 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 no whammies. Money's what I want. Money is what I want. No, 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 no whammies. Money's what I want. Money is what I want. No, 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 no whammies. For me, please. I stopped the money. I stop on some money. I didn't stop on a whammy. I stopped the money. I stop on some money. I didn't stop on a whammy. I stopped the money. I stop on some money. I didn't stop on a whammy. Pass my last spin, please. Stop on a whammy. Stop on a whammy. Player 3, please stop on a whammy. Stop on a whammy. Player 3, please stop on a whammy. Stop on a whammy. Player 3, listen to me. So I succeed. She got a whammy. She got a whammy. I am very pleased. She got a whammy. She got a whammy. I am very pleased. She got a whammy. She got a whammy. I am pleased. Victory goes to Bradley. I won the money. I won the money. I just beat the whammy. I won the money. I won the money. I just beat the whammy. I won the money. I won the money. I just beat the whammy. I'm so happy. Money's what I want. I can feel it in my heart that one day I'll get a chance to play a spin or two on the Pressure Luck big board, and hopefully my Bradley parody proves correct. I'll win lots of money, and I'll avoid the whammy. And that was this episode's Bradley Parody. Bradley Parody. Well, I feel like I just stopped on a whammy because the total amount of time for this episode of the game show is now at 0. And that unfortunately means episode number 69 is coming to a close. My thanks once again to game show super producer Bob Boden, aka TV Bob, for being my guest today. Now, if you would like to listen to Bob's first appearance on the game show, which occurred on episode number 32, or listen to both of Bob's appearances on the game show back to back, all you have to do is log on to www.soundcloud.com/Bradley_Clarke, that's BRADLEY_CLARKE/sets/the game show. That's www.soundcloud.com/Bradley_Clarke, that's BRADLEY_CLARKE/sets/the game show. In addition, the game show is on YouTube. That's right, you can also listen to every single episode, game segment, Bradley Parody, and more by going onto the YouTube channel of The Game Show starring Bradley Clarke. And if you're a loyal friend and true, please remember to like and subscribe. But that's not all. The Game Show can also be found on Spotify, Google Podcasts, Apple Podcasts, and Anchor. Yes, every guest I've interviewed, game I've created, and Bradley Parody I've sung can be heard on Spotify, Google Podcasts, Apple Podcasts, and Anchor by searching for The Game Show starring Bradley Clarke. And no matter if you're a new fan or a super fan, don't forget to hit that follow button. Plus, don't forget to like The Game Show starring Bradley Clarke on Facebook and follow The Game Show starring Bradley Clarke on Twitter using the handle @TheGameShowBC and #TheGameShow. And of course, be sure to tune in next time for another exciting episode of the talk show all about the world of television game and competition shows, The Game Show. I'm Bradley Clarke, the Bradster, and I've got to go count up the money in my wallet just in case the whammy finds it and deposits my money into the big bank. When the whammy is involved, you can never be too careful with your money. Bye for now.
This edition of The Game Show was created and produced by Bradley Clarke. This is Austin Angelo speaking.
The Game Show is a Bradley Clarke production. Get your game on.